Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I would like to talk a little bit about some of the more severe forms of eating disorders that we're seeing in the bodybuilding world among young men. And I'm going to use that term bodybuilding loosely here because it's not actually bodybuilding, it's generally just men who are physique oriented. And let's discuss just a little bit of how things have gotten to that point, because this is not something historically we have seen in young men. And I want to get to that in just a minute. But first, let's just kind of discuss the more extreme cases we're seeing. We are seeing cases today to where you're no longer just seeing anorexic young men. You are seeing that in certain circles, but we are seeing young men who now become drug obsessed. They use a wide variety of drugs to facilitate their eating disorders and facilitate their ability to get ripped and shredded and get leaner, not just bigger anymore. So we've gone from previous bigorexia being there, and we still have a large number of cases of that. We see plenty of it on YouTube itself. But we're seeing a lot of young men now who not only work out and have a decent amount of size, but now become obsessed with being shredded to the point to where cocktails of various drugs, some legal, some illegal, some prescription, being thrown into the mix to try to facilitate their eating disorders. And the worst cases are things like, where guys are, the guy's talking about trinsomnia. Well, it's guys who are using trenbolone is an extremely powerful muscle building and fat building agent, but it also causes insomnia. And you'll see guys who are also using various stimulants and things. And so a lot of guys are using stimulants to get their metabolism up, and then they can't sleep. They're using the trenbolone to get their fat burning and muscle building up, but then they can't sleep. And then they use, again, various substances to help bring them back down so that they can sleep. And then a lot of them have appetite suppressing effects, like you're seeing a lot of young guys who are using Adderall and things these days to suppress their appetite while using, again, various things like trenbolone and other muscle building and fat burning agents, clenbuterol, things like that. But again, they can interfere with sleep, and then they'll use Xanax, Ambien, things like that to bring themselves back down so they can actually sleep at night. And I mean, when we're getting to this point, this is a very, very unhealthy lifestyle at this point, if this is what people are doing. And a lot of them are doing it for months and sometimes years on end. And so it starts to beg the question of, how do we get to this point? And I think it's really multifold in nature. The number one factor that I see here coming up, it comes to do with this whole gender identity crisis we have in society. We've had people within our society here in the Western world who have tried to demasculinize men. They've tried to feminize men, and they tried to masculize women because they want gender to disappear. But they don't understand that in some ways gender roles are important for psychological health. And I'm not talking about the oppression of women or any such nonsense. I'm not talking about being anti-female, but I'm talking about having masculine versus feminine mindsets. And by making masculine mindsets socially unfavorable, we are seeing men who are picking up feminine traits. And I'm not trying to bash on women, because for women to have body image disorders and eating disorders and all of these problems that they have, young women, is a terrible thing. But when it's now spreading from 50% of the population jumping over to another section of the population that psychologists don't know how to deal with yet, this creates quite a disaster. At least with young women, psychologists have enough background with it that they can treat them easier. There's more source material to draw from because it has historically been a female problem. They know how to deal with it easier. But when it jumps over to men, you're seeing some of the top experts out there who are even claiming it doesn't even exist. There aren't really men who are that obsessed with this stuff. Men don't have the same level of body image disorders that women do. So it's not really the same problem, and this has been said at lectures by some of the top experts in the field. And that's a really scary thing, because to prove those experts wrong, all you need to do is go read any bodybuilding forum anywhere on the internet and read what these young men are writing that they do and writing to each other and encouraging each other to do. Go into any gym and start talking with the young guys who are hanging out in a circle and find out what they really do. That's all you have to do to prove that these top experts actually don't know what's going on. And if the top experts don't know what's going on, it is going to be harder to write treatment protocols. And particularly once it gets this bad to where these young men are using whole cocktails of drugs to build muscle, burn fat, deal with their insomnia, to get themselves up, then bring themselves back down. This is a very scary and volatile situation that we have now. And a lot of it, again, stems back to gender identity crisis, because worrying about your physique to that degree and the beauty and aesthetics of your body is a very, very feminine thing. And historically, male values and male group thinking has prevented that from happening, because historically any man who did that would have been so made fun of that he would have quit immediately. He would just stop and be like, oh, you guys are right, let me have a beer, I'm not worried about my abs so much. And because he'll get tired of being picked on by his peers, they would make fun of him for being a sissy boy, basically. So it wouldn't have happened a lot historically. It would have been very, very rare, but now it's becoming common because these young men are all obsessing over their own aesthetics, the aesthetics of others. They find whole circles of young men, sometimes at the gym, but generally online, who will facilitate this sort of group and this groupthink affecting it in the other direction, instead of just cutting it off before it starts and becomes bad, just due to various male peer bonding. Male peer bonding is now allowing for it because men have been demasculinized, and it's okay to have a feminine mindset. And now it's getting to the point to where, since the whole groupthink of young men who have a feminine mindset all think the same sort of things, and they encourage it and honestly even ag each other on that some sort of alpha male behavior to have an actual feminine mindset. So it's really interesting, and I think that gets pushed even further when you go to the online community, because again, you need only go to any of these forums or social media groups. Go to some of the various Facebook groups for fitness and bodybuilding and all of that out there, and you will see these young men encouraging each other with it. They again use at least the online groups to encourage the most reckless behavior, the most dangerous mindsets towards their physiques. And so I think the internet and the subculture online has taken what's already happened with our trying to create a gender neutral society and removing traditional masculine and male mindsets and values, and male groupthink and peer bonding is changed. Since that's already been reduced, we now have an opening for that, and young men then can go join groups online that will push the opposite, and will push them, if they had already had an issue starting, they'll push them up 2 notches to the most extreme. And they'll even find other groups of young men who do these same sort of activities and get advice on how to even stack their cocktails of drugs to do this. This is where it gets problematic. And I'm not saying every man is prone to this, but it's eating disorders tend to be very anxiety prone in nature. So people who have a predisposition towards various OCDs or anxiety disorders are going to be the easiest victims of this. These are the people who are going to fall into this really easily, and it's a pretty sizable chunk of the population. And I think the main thing is that what people need to realize, if you have anxiety disorders and they go untreated and you're not getting psychiatric help or the help that you need, that's where it all starts. Because the top experts now don't even acknowledge some of this or realize how to treat it, they don't have treatment protocols when it gets extremely bad. Some individual psychologists can definitely help, but we don't have the tools available to deal with it the way that we do in females, because it is coming from a different place mentally. So by cutting it off early, we can reduce the chance of it getting that bad. So if you're already prone to anxiety disorders or OCD, getting those treated and under control early will help tremendously. Because what ends up happening, the people who are prone to those things, who are really unhappy with their life, maybe people who have social anxiety disorder, so maybe they don't have the sort of friends that they want. Maybe they're shy with girls due to social anxiety disorder. They don't have the women they want. Or they have a job that they really hate. They feel mistreated by their boss and their peers in some way. They feel like their life is outside of their control. And maybe they see these guys on the internet and all these jacked and shredded guys, and it comes into their head when they start working out that maybe if they looked like that, they would get the respect that they want from other men. They would get the respect from other men in the workplace. They would get respect from other men in social groups, and therefore they would be more in control of their life. They would be seen as someone who's more likely to be respected, have control of their own life. Maybe they'll even get the women that they want, the women that either rejected them or they were too shy to approach, or they just got friend zoned by. So coming from that place, men who are already in these situations, who are prone to any sort of OCD or anxiety disorder, who get into lifting, who again feel out of control of their life for whatever reason, they're going to be the most susceptible. These are the people who need to be aware of what can happen You combine that with the already attempts at making a gender neutral society and gender confusion that's out there and confusion of gender role models, and a lot of these young men don't really know where their place is in the world, and so they want to regain control of their lives. And so they start training and start working out, and they might even be okay then, even if they're predisposed to these issues, until they discover the online fitness world. And that's where your recipe for disaster happens. You have young men who, as I've described already, who get into training, then they discover these online groups. And they pretty much just get sucked in, just pulled in hook, line, and sinker. And so I think the thing that people need to be aware of, the best thing you can do if you're dealing with any sort of OCD or anxiety disorders in this modern world and you are starting to train, getting those things treated, getting psychological help to make sure you have them under control is the best way to deal with this. And if you know someone who is dealing with these problems, and all of us do, who do all of this stuff, maybe it's time to talk to them. If there's someone you care about, someone you love, or even a good friend of yours, you should be considering talking to them about, number one, getting help, talking to a counselor about their issue, and number two, getting them as far away as possible from these online groups, these forums, these Facebook groups, these Twitter groups that promote these more extreme ideas regarding body fat and getting ultra ripped. All right, guys, but that's just my advice on this, and this is just my observations, so I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.